Okay, so we are now recording. If you would prefer, feel free to turn off your video or blur your background. I'm just going to spotlight myself and bring in Michele. There she is. Hi, Michele.
Hello.
So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to Michele. A lot of you know her. We've just got a bit of background noise. Actually, it's okay. I think that's gone. I might just ask you guys to mute yourselves. Thank you. Okay, so Michele has graciously offered, was asked and agreed to come along and chat to us about Etsy today. So I'm really excited. So Michele lives in Lexington, South Carolina. She's a lifelong seamstress and needle arts crafter, learning from her mother and grandmother, crochet, knitting, hand embroidery, cross stitching. So Michael is her husband of 35 years and they have two children, Michael, who's 33, and Camille, who's 30, and a lovely son-in-law, Walter. Michele has always handcrafted items and clothing for herself, her children, friends, and family, and dreamed of a career making beautiful items for others, but had no clue how to get the designs out into the world other than local long-distance fairs or knowing someone to get featured in magazines and markets. When Michele began her blog in 2007, she found the world of crafty friends and began with Etsy. The internet, blogging, and Etsy has made Michele who she is today. Michele's had over 2,308 sales and has 4,879 admirers on her Etsy store with 372 five-star reviews. We're extremely lucky to have Michele's Etsy knowledge and expertise with us. She's such a valued member of our community and is so gracious to be here and answer questions. Thanks, Michele. I'm really excited to dive into this with you today. So what I've done is I've taken the questions that were at the bottom of the post. I was going to break them up somewhat, but I actually realized when I was doing that they were all interrelated, especially the question that
Mm.
Deb asks first. So Michele, let's come back to that one because I think that's going to be a really interesting topic. So I'd just like to go to Maya's question first around VAT tax and tariffs. So these two things put shipping and selling on Etsy, they make it a challenge. How do you navigate the VAT tax and tariffs?
As an American, I've actually never had to worry about it. I remember when that came out and all the Etsy gals in the UK or whatever was very worried there for their digital products or whatever they were doing. And so in America, I'll just start there with what I know. The only time I used to have to manage taxes was we'd have to do our own individual state, pull the state taxes because it used to be where you weren't charged tax um, if you lived in another state. When all that changed because of so much e-commerce, Etsy just took over managing the taxes, so I never had to worry about state tax anymore. And
So it was just
I haven't
automatically
had
applied to the
it.
sale.
It is, and then
Right,
the person pays it, and then Etsy never gives it to me. They just take all the
right.
fees. So I start with that story because I did read about currently VAT taxes,
Mm,
and I just did a cursory read, and it says, and I noticed that there's places where you can put in your VAT tax, and you put in, obviously where you are, where you're selling from and sending
mm,
from, and your VAT number. I'm just only telling you what I read because I
mm,
don't
mm.
know your
Yeah.
system. And then it seems like Etsy manages all that for you. You never get it. They take care of it. You're charged it and they get their 2.5% off whatever someone's paid. So you
Yeah.
pay a percentage for that transaction, including tax and shipping.
Yeah.
But it seems like what I read was that Etsy takes care of it, and they do the deed and turn it in.
Yeah.
It seems like that's what I read.
So you
That's
don't
what they do
have
in
to
America.
manually put in anything or select any tariff codes, or you don't have to
I
manually select
I
anything?
Well, I think that on your end, when you set your shop up, it knows where you are. Then when the
Yeah,
person buying it, so if you're in Germany and a person in the UK or the United States is buying it, their address is going to
that's
tell
right. So Etsy
about the
sophisticated
VAT
it enough.
taxes and
Yeah,
stuff, and Etsy does the calculations.
yeah.
That's all I read because I'm afraid that my great success on the front end of Etsy, I've kind of ridden on my laurels the last few years because not much changes. It's all gotten easier.
Right.
So, I mean, Etsy's gotten annoyinger, but like right now, they have
Yeah.
me, a 15-year Etsy person, on their payment reserve. I don't know how to get off it. They're going to hold on to my money because they think that I possibly could be a danger based on what I've read. I'm a
Yeah.
risky person. I wrote a note. I wrote a
Yeah.
note. I'm going to
Yeah.
call on Tuesday, but
Mm.
I I read that it can randomly hit places. But anyways, outside of that, that's what I read about the VAT, and I hated that that was the one big question that Maya had because it's so simple for me now, and I
Do
never have to
you?
worry about it.
Yeah, and we might actually, I'm going to do a post about this on the group page because have a feeling with that and the European taxes now. So I know that ConvertKit flags VAT and European taxes. So let's just do a taxes post in our group on Etsy. And I'm really keen to hear from some of our other European friends whether they navigate the space differently with VAT, or is, as you say, Michelle, Etsy just sophisticated enough to know that, I live in the UK and, Ali's buying from me and she's in Australia, so I've got to charge Ali GST. And then because she's making a purchase in the UK, I've got to charge her VAT. And I see Danny's holding her
Yeah.
thumbs up.
Well,
And so, yes, it appears that Etsy is sophisticated enough to know that. So, um,
and I
I'm
know that
wondering,
when I ship something, which I have not shipped in the last couple years overseas,
mm,
but I know when I ship, if I pick the international, whether I do it through Etsy's process or I did it through my other service,
mm,
and it's going to go to the UK, you totally get that international form
yeah,
and you fill it in, you say exactly what it is, how many items, how much each item is, and then
yeah,
what the total was.
yeah.
So that on your end, when it gets over there, I guess your post charges you a tax to get your package. I don't know how that works on your end or how,
Yeah, I don't know how that works either, but
I don't
that's,
even know if
is
that
that
happens
more a
anymore.
customs? Is that more
Oh
customs?
yeah, wasn't that a
That's
customs thing? Yeah.
customs, yeah.
So I didn't know if
So,
that was taxes or
yeah, so
customs.
in Australia, I don't pay additional customs, but I know that some of our Canadian friends do. So I know that if they shop um, in the UK or the USA for packages and they arrive, if it's over a certain value, I believe they have to pay customs duty on that. So, yeah, interesting. Taxes always look, there's one sure thing in life, right? And that's actually, isn't there two sure things in life, tax and death? Isn't that how it goes?
Mhm.
So we're never going to get away from it. But I guess in a sense, we're lucky that Etsy is sophisticated enough to know or to help us try and figure these out. Because imagine where we would be if it wasn't. So I guess the learning from the tax question is to make sure that when you're setting up your store and you're working through where you are, that you are paying attention to those tax questions so that your store is set up correctly at the
I don't think you're going to get through the process without answering the
without
questions
doing
because
that.
it's got the
Yeah.
red star, so it knows where you are.
Yeah.
So it knows what
Yeah.
it needs
There's
to
no
know.
escape.
No, it knows
Yeah.
what it needs to know
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah, true. Okay. So let's dive into Deb's question. And I love this question from Deb. I was going to start breaking it down and work through it question by question, but as I was doing that, I'm like, hang on a minute, this is kind of all related, right? So let me just bog
Mhm.
in and let's work our way through. So, Michelle, how much of your sales comes from Etsy and not you driving traffic there? Okay. If it's Etsy and not you, was there some kind of event that drove your sales, like being featured, or advertised, or I guess, a preferred supplier by Etsy, something along
Mhm.
those lines? And if it's more you, what does your marketing look like to get folks to Etsy?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning of that. So, how much of your sales comes from Etsy and not you driving traffic there?
So I think that we need to flip the questions because
Okay.
I thought it through. I made a list, and I
Yep.
think you have to
Yep.
go back to the beginning. You before you worry about your marketing,
Yep.
all the things that Allie's teaching us. You go back to your beginning, and so um, I think the first thing you need to do is you take your beautiful photos, quality photos with the beautiful, make sure it's white behind you and not yellow, and that it's brilliant and a gorgeous photos, and you've got a good close up and a good back view, and now they like a little video. So I think that's the first place that you started was with something beautiful to show your beautiful item. Now, the second thing I think you need to do is how you list your product. And I learned this from the beginning when we didn't even understand what SEO was back in 2008. I mean, I had to learn so many things I'd never heard of. But I've always followed the practice of, you know, I'm going to talk about that little art piece that I sold, a couple of the landscapes, because it applies to everybody here. And I knew what to do because of what I learned from selling pillow covers and other things. Is I went and looked on Etsy at art, and I found items that were similar to my landscape, and I read their descriptions and I saw how they listed them. Then I scrolled to the bottom of their listing and looked at all the keywords that they picked, the areas that they put them in: mini fine art, mini landscapes, miniature landscapes. So because you have all these chances to use your words, so you want to get as many keywords into your little slots as possible. And and if it was a floral, you'd have, tropical floral, or if it was Chris's mermaids, you'd have mermaid, so you'd have mermaid art down in your keywords. So you think about that. And then after you've lined up your keywords and you've got a little pad of them, you pick the things that you like the best, that you feel comfortable with. And I consider that my outline of how I'm going to talk about my miniature landscape. Because up in your title, you're going to want, and this is relevant because that title is your marketing. Really, it's when people are looking for something, that's how they're going to look for it. So you can't give it some esoteric name like Pretty Trees in the Forest of Glen. You have to say miniature landscape, then Forest of Glen, and then 5x7, and be clear. It's kind of ugly sometimes, you think, but you want it just what you need so that Google's going to pick it up, and that searches are going to pick it up, Etsy's going to pick it up. And then in your description, when you get started, don't start with, I was painting a pretty scene from a trip that I took. That's a story for somewhere else. You need to say, miniature landscape, fine art, exactly what it is, and then kind of move into your other words and make a pretty paragraph that gives your information and the size and everything. And that's all really important because when someone's searching, they could search it any weird way, and you've got a lot of those keywords and you've doubled up. So you have more chances of it going round and round. So that's the beginning. You've got your gorgeous little pictures. You've made a great title. That's not as pretty as you want sometimes, but it is relative.
But it's a
And
title with
then
purpose, right? It's a
the,
title with
the title with
purpose.
purpose. Thank
Yeah.
you. And so then, okay, so now you have your listing, go. And then of course, when I started, I was blogging. So I would talk about my items and send people over, so I had that. And I just learned to use my keywords all the time. And so then I did the same when I started Instagram. I think it's been 8 years, 7 years. One of my clients said, "You've got to do this." So I think I've been on Instagram 7 years. And I make sure that when I say things that I start out, you know, with, I always put the font first, my font. I'll have like South Point, monograms, applique, pillow sham, or whatever it is, and then in the description something, and then all my keys. So I just wanted to say first, the marketing is your responsibility, and that's
And
the
so,
best way.
Michelle, that's your formula for listing, and you follow that formula pattern every time you make a
It's
listing. So
kind of
all
it's
of your listings are fairly standard.
fairly
Yeah.
yeah, I follow a path, and then if I've read somebody else's great description, and again, going back to the art, I had to read a lot of people's descriptions, and I sold that art within 2 weeks. The
Mm.
two pieces I sold, and I ended up in the place of those other landscape artists. And it must have been that, because no one's bought the other stuff. But I think
That's a
I'm
good
just
tip.
taking you back from where I
Yeah.
started and how
Yeah.
I grew with the internet to where I am now. So
Yeah.
part of it is just habit. So that's why I wanted, now we all know all this big stuff. It's kind of scary. But if you go back to the beginning, the most
Yeah.
important thing is
And
that growth.
sometimes that's the key, I think, is actually don't get caught up with the I should be doing this and I should be doing that. Sometimes going back to basics is exactly where you need to be.
Because from there, when people can find you, you're going
Yeah.
to move on. And
Yeah.
so then with the blogging, and I fell off the blog train, especially once Instagram, was there, because it was so much easier to give you a daily kind of quick picture. I mean, I was a serious blogger where I had good grammar, and I didn't use I didn't use personal pronouns. I made good sentences. I didn't talk about the kids spilling cereal on the floor. It was a purposeful
Yeah.
blog. And so I think that people they said so appreciated that. I wrote patterns and things like that, showed people how to do things. So then we get to the Instagram. So I just wanted to say that's how I got out there. Plus, I used to be one of the few. I mean, one a lot of people had the embroidery machines. I thought I'd be doing little children's clothing or purses or whatever, but I hated that. Once somebody asked me to do a pillow cover and I got into home decor, I was like, oh, this is great. And then I was crazy to learn how to do the big monogramming. And I figured it out. And I used to be one of the few. COVID kind of wiped me out because a lot of other people got in on it when they couldn't go to work and they were bored and had dollars and could get the machines, because it's not rocket science, but you do have to spend a lot of time on it. And then now, regarding Etsy, yes, they bumped me a lot. I used to be the first thing you ever saw. I mean, you could just, from wherever you were in the world, you could just, and I did it. I would go on people's Google that didn't know me, and I'd say, hey, can I use your computer? And I would type in, large monogram King Sham. And I would come up on their Googles, on their IPs.
Yeah.
Number one or number two, I'd be there. And so I'd go around, if I was working,
Yeah.
if I was at the hospital, if I was at your house, I'd say, I want to Google myself. And so I would do that. But I used to be with Etsy, you'd always see me first.
Yeah.
And
But also it's the importance of keywords, right? So it's the importance of using
it
those
is.
keywords in
And
your listings and in your
in your
descriptions.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Everywhere.
then so then Etsy started saying, hey, we'll feature you, we'll do this, we'll do
Right.
that, Chad, pay. And I never really wanted to pay them. I never loved Etsy because I loved Etsy, but they do what they want, and they take your money, and they take your money the way they want. And there's nothing I can do about that. And I tried to start a Shopify, but I was a transcriptionist. I had another business. Kids were in high school and middle school. And I didn't understand all the things, would just get bogged down. And Etsy made it so easy that I
And
kind of just gave
that's the
in.
key, isn't it? Etsy does make it
Things are
easy.
very, very affordable because you're not paying a monthly rent. You're just paying for your 20-cent listing. And
Yeah.
it's all the fees they take from you. But I mean, I've sold a lot of stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like I didn't make money. I just get
Yeah.
upset about certain other things.
Yeah.
But I'm almost to the end of all the questions for Deb. When Etsy, you can be in their promotions. I mean, I think it's tricky when they were telling us, do no shipping and we'll be sure to bump you to the top. That's pissy. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Do I lie about shipping, and say, oh yeah, that's no shipping, but I don't have it in the right category? I don't know why they have shipping then. If they're going to tell you, then every time you put your shipping money in, it says people don't like to pay that much. Well, I'm sorry, that's what the post office is charging. And I tell people, I don't really have to tell people because people know, but local people, when you hear, oh, shipping, I look, by the time you get in the car and you stop for a Diet Coke and you drive across town, you've spent as much money as $7.95 for priority 3-day shipping. Pay the shipping. And I get testy about that because I think you're not thinking straight when you say that. But
we might come back to shipping actually, because I think this is going to be a really interesting one to unpack.
So they were doing that promotion of don't put shipping, and I didn't like that, and I think a lot of people started going, no, that's ridiculous accounting, it's wrong. People need to know it costs to take time to wrap your item properly and ship. So then they started saying, hey, we'll feature you, and you can pay if you have, how Google does it too, and other places, you can have a budget of $5 a day and they'll show you off that many dollars. But then they also want a little extra for that too. I never did that because I really wasn't sure how much better it was going to be. And then finally, the last couple of years, what they've done is, you know what? We're going to advertise you anyway. You don't have to worry about it. We'll take our money when you make a sale. So if like Chris goes to Mary Beth's shop and she says, oh, look at this pretty art that Mary Beth has. I like flower art. And then Etsy says, oh, you like flower art? What? Michelle's got, you want to see Michelle's flower art? And you go, I like Michelle's flower art. Then you go to Michelle's shop and you go, that's the flower art I want. So through Mary Beth's shop, you've come to Michelle's shop, you buy my flower art. And then you know what Etsy tells me? Etsy tells me, hey, your $100 piece that this person buy, we usually take our 3.5%, but you know what? We sent Chris to you, so we're going to take another 15 off the tax and the shipping too, off the total transaction, and Etsy will tell you, you should be grateful because you know why? It was in a paragraph. I'm acting it out, but it's how I feel. It's exactly how I feel. He said, you should be grateful because it's not like you had to pay an advertising budget. It's just a winner every time it happens. But you know what? They could take that extra 15% off maybe something that you have as your cost. Like I have a couple styles that I keep at $25 and $30 so that most anybody can buy something custom. It's my low cost sale of, just the initial pillow or this. I keep it like at a $25 to a $50 range of a few items. That makes it easy for anyone to be able to afford something without it being $100. So that by the time they take their fees and their extra 15%, we're down to, I need to make that thing for $15, but I should be grateful because
Etsy sent them to you.
Etsy sent, but Mary Beth, thank you so much. Cause the thing that you were making made Etsy think of me. And while someone was at your store, it's like you had someone in your shop at your shop on the street on Main Street saying, hey, look, she makes that, but walk with me right over here. And Michelle's got it too. Maybe you like her prices better.
So is that at the bottom of an Etsy listing when you go to the bottom and it says other items you may like or something?
Yeah. And so that's how, or
does Mary Beth then get a cut of that? Does Mary
Beth? If you're scrolling Instagram or Facebook, it does it too. If they catch your attention somewhere and you go, if your customer was caught by attention some out there in the world, because it could feature me in one of their Etsy things, not feature, but just showing off and that brings you over. Even if you went to 3 or 4 different places, like if Mary Beth paid to be featured and then they left her and came to me and pay, if that trail brought you to me, they're going to take money. So
but again, they come through Mary Beth's store. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. I mean,
And
I
then,
understand why they're doing it because they are serving up content for to keep people there to, if you've got to the end of that
mhm,
listing and you haven't purchased, is there something else they can get you to purchase? I
mhm,
understand what they're doing, but when you explain it like the way you are, and then they charge you, 15% for the privilege of that, as you
mhm,
say, your $25 monogram pillow,
mhm.
you're now making that for a lot less
And
because
I
of all
don't
the
think
fee.
it's necessarily every time, like if you yourself went to a shop and you're looking at this uh, purse, monogrammed purse, and then Etsy knows you like that stuff, and on your front page of Etsy, then you see mine and you come over. I don't get charged that often. So it's not all the time from you going from place to place, but it's if you've come through their actual advertising of someone or something, Etsy's, and you come through that path to my shop,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
that's when I get
And
charged.
I
So it's
guess
not,
too, Etsy is a sophisticated machine. There's a
whew,
lot of techno, there's a lot of research that goes into it, and it all takes them time and money, right? So they are
right.
not going to miss you in fees any step of the way, right? And I
Mm-mm,
guess it's about putting it into perspective, isn't it? It's like they've made it easy for us to sell our art and what we make
mm-hmm,
online, but they also have
true.
costs and research and keeping up to date and new trends and
Mm-hmm,
this and that they've also got to keep up to date with to stay relevant, because as we know, these things evolve and change. So we pay the fees as a privilege for them to do that
mm-hmm,
for us. So um and look, no platform is going to miss you. Let's be clear about that. Whether it's Etsy, whether it's PayPal, whether whatever it is that you're doing, there are all fees and costs involved.
mm-hmm.
And it's just navigating and understanding what they are and making whatever you do work for you, but also know what your taxes and charges are going to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I have just,
Michelle, yes.
go ahead, go ahead.
Um, admirers. I was impressed when you saw you had 4,879 admirers. So they are
Me
people who
too.
follow your store.
I never, I never look. That's nice.
Yeah. So
Ah,
those are people who specifically have followed your store,
mm-hmm.
right? And so
Yep.
they, every time you list something, they get to know that you've listed a new item.
If they look at their cover page, yeah, I always go
Yeah.
directly to my shop. I never go to just Etsy.com and see what's on my homepage of
Yeah.
Etsy,
So
but
yeah, so I've
yeah.
got my notifications set up on my phone. So when I go into my Etsy store on my phone, I see on my front page the shops that I follow
Oh, you
and
do.
when
And
they've
see what they,
new items. So
mm-hmm.
when I saw that you had 4,879
I
people
think
doing
I'd
that
have
on
more
your account.
sales. I think I'd be
That is
busier.
impressive. That is impressive. But
I've been on a
Michelle,
long time.
and I was
2008
going to
is a
say,
long time ago.
it's the beauty of longevity, right? But
Hmm.
longevity and consistent and listening to what your buyers are wanting and doing more of that,
Hmm.
right?
I think too, I know I make a big story about things, and I want to make one more point about being put on that payment reserve. That's really
Yes.
got my heart racing. I'm either mad or ashamed, one or the other, because I'm like, why are you doing this to me? I've never asked you for anything, Etsy. I do whatever you say, but I read, I was trying to research it, and Etsy this last year started using those affinity programs where you can do like 5 easy payments, through a
Right.
affinity program or one of those things.
Right.
So they're not getting all their money up front. Like
No.
somebody was saying that part of that is they're holding reserves because it's costing
And
them too.
until that person has made their final payment
I
is
I don't know how. I mean, because you have to do it through that company,
would
not
that
it's not
be
really
45
Etsy.
days? Because if you
But
do those sorts of
it,
payment schemes, you pay every fortnight. Is that right?
but I think for me, I have a long wait period, and the reason I have a long wait period, I mean, I always have an 8 week turnaround.
Yeah.
However, their breakdowns are 6 to 7 weeks. It's not. or in 8 to 9 weeks, I had to pick. Otherwise, I'd be in the 6 to 7, and people would be thinking on the 6 end, and I couldn't do it. So now people think I take extra long. I try to explain to people, and I've seen other custom makers like me who say, "Look, we have to shop, we have to do the thing, make the designs, do all the stuff. It's we're not Amazon, and we don't
It's a
manufacture your color."
handmade, it's a
But
custom made
that's,
product. Yeah.
if you look at my people who do give me a poor, like a low star thing, it'll be, well, it is a nice item, but it takes a long time. And I'm like, well, what did you want? You didn't want it custom? You wanted to go down the street and just have that lady over there do it? Then go, because you
Yeah.
don't have to come. Anyway, I just wanted to say that affinity, that's really, I'm on edge today because I'm thinking, oh, they're whatever. When you said all the good things about me, I'm going to tell you how upset I've been, the last couple of days. But on the other hand, when I was in college, I mean, I've always made things for people. And I was in college in the 80s. I mean, we won the award for the prettiest dorm room, because I made curtains and we would do the bedding and we do all the stuff. I love that. I would make gals
I can imagine.
formal
Yeah.
dresses and party dresses. Because,
Yeah.
in the 80s, it was all strapless. It was easy. I didn't need to make big sleeves and everything. But
I wish I had a friend like you.
I had one friend who, her body shape was a little odd and made it difficult for her to shop. So I was able to make her a dress and fit it accordingly. I mean, it's not like I'm a Vogue seamstress, but I'm good enough. I was even then. I made my wedding dress. I know how to do the stuff. I always wanted to do this. And when I was a young mom, I made the beautiful clothes for the kids, all that. I made whatever crafty thing there was. And I would be so envious of the gals that you would see in magazines. We're like, how do they know? How did they get there? I just wasn't in a family who knew stuff, textiles and things. So, unless you knew someone, you didn't know how to get in manufacturing, or then how is it yours still if you're having it manufactured? Like it's not your. And I just felt so frustrated. And then I had the babies and learned how to be a medical transcriptionist and work from home. And that fulfilled me. And I still sewed on the side or whatever. But then that itch to be more creative was coming back. And when we moved here and I had more space and I got the first machine, and then the blogging, and then Etsy. And then once that happened, the first person who asked me to make, it was Pottery Barn, was having initial pillows. So they would have the pillow cover with a M period. So someone said, can you do this? And I did one. You do it in white and navy. And then the next person says, oh, but I want it in orange and blue. And now you have 2 photos. So you didn't have to make 500 items and hope they sell. You just make 1 or 2 and take great photos.
Yeah.
And then it was the making of me. And I, as frustrated or nervous that Etsy makes me, I couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm at the end of my story. But
Yeah.
I
And I
just
love
want
this.
you to know how much I appreciate it. But it is not easy.
Yeah.
It is not easy. It's not easy to be consistent and to do it and to think of the next thing, and you get really good at what you're doing, and then the world moved on and you look up and you found out that everything moved on and you need to think of something else now. It's very hard. That part is hard, to keep moving, but keep doing what you're doing, but keep learning. It is not easy. It is not easy.
So I want to
But
come
I'm
back to
grateful.
Etsy, but I actually am really interested in your journey as well. I love that you started with blogging, because what that shows is consistency. Like back in the day, if you had a successful blog, it was about
Oh,
being consistent and having your a focus and sticking with that focus so that you became known as the person who whatever, right?
I
And
was
so
ranked.
people would look for your blog.
Yep. I was
Yeah.
ranked in the top 100 craft bloggers. I mean, I was so
Well
surprised
done.
when I saw the ranking. And behind me are books, and a number of the gals like Jennifer Paganelli, and I didn't know Miss Mustard Seed, but it was people like them. I can't think of all the people before.
Yeah.
There was a gal, called Pink Something. And so when there were quilters, and I would be in their groups and I would do some of the work for them, and then it would end up in magazines. And then I wrote patterns, and I'm in some of these books behind me. And I'm also in a beautiful monogram for the home book written by Kimberly Schlegel Whitman out of Dallas. She's like one
Wow.
of the
Yeah.
OG life people. I mean, they don't invite
Yeah.
me to their house. We're not friends, but they used my work and
Yeah.
with blogging, and that was that was really fun. But I got to the
Yeah.
point where all I had to talk about was my pillow covers. It switched, because when I was blogging, I would talk about any crafting I was doing, and then you were in groups, so you could talk about kind of
Mm.
what like you're doing now, Allie, because
Mm.
you're growing and you're meeting other artists,
Mm.
and then you're trying this product or that and doing it that
Yeah.
way, and then you're doing. But
Yeah.
once you get in your role, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm transcribing all day for the doctors. Kids are in high school. I've got all these orders to make, and I had nothing to say for a while. My
Yeah.
grandmother had passed away, and my husband's had cancer and been ill. That's been
Mm.
hard to stop and go for people's
And
health.
life happens, and it's
Mm-hmm.
life happens, and you just sometimes have to roll with the punches and pick
And
yourself up and
can't be
dust yourself
creative
off.
when you're worried. It's hard to be
Yeah,
creative
it
and
is.
think of something new, beautiful, when you have somebody's life and death on your hands,
Yeah.
and you're still managing young kids. And,
Yeah.
it really takes a toll. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got to roll
And so,
with it.
Michelle, evolving, so you've got your monogram, and if you haven't been on to Michelle's Etsy page, go and have a look, because her monogramming is just beautiful.
It's beautiful. I don't just do
It
the
is just,
letters
yeah.
that come in the package or the idea. If your R is weird, we're not going to have a weird R. We're going to
Yeah.
make that R the P. We're going to make it beautiful. People say, you can't get a pretty L. I can give you a pretty L.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, it's just two legs, and you're like, well, that's garbage next to a big, beautiful M, you know. And, but my Lillian's an artist, and I've learned a lot. Lillian's a calligrapher, and I've learned a lot that now I take parts of another letter and I embellish the weird letter, and we make it not the weird letter of the alphabet.
It's just truly
I,
beautiful.
I,
So,
I can just say I'm so happy about that you noticed
yeah.
that.
Yeah, so gorgeous. So you where to from here? So I will you evolve to other things as well as monogramming? Like, um, like I
Mhm.
know in the South where you are, monogramming is big, isn't it? It's quite it's
But
big,
it's had its
but
time
it's not
again.
all over the States, and
Mhm.
it's not something that happens in this part of the world. Do you
Right.
think are you looking at doing or evolving and adding something else into your
Yeah.
stable? I'm really interested in what your plans are.
Yes. I also, knowing how to sew clothes, I keep my eye on skirts are back in where people are hand making them. I've got that on my mind. But I also can make beautiful little dolls. I can do that. But I have all these little projects around here that I can do. It's just where you're going to put your effort in
Yeah.
and how you're going to build it. But I think my next skill that I'm working on is slip covering chairs and ottomans
Yeah.
and benches,
Perfect.
because there's only one slip coverer in the Columbia, South Carolina area right now, an older gentleman. And so I just have to get my game on. I have some chairs to do, and I'm getting ready to, I've got the fabrics laid out, and you have to learn how to, you just drape the fabric, and then you cut it, you make your own pattern as you go. So I have that in mind. And, yeah, I do try to keep my eye out for
Yeah. I have
what
two
is the
chairs
next
in the
thing.
dining room window here with wingback chairs, and they both
Yep.
have slip covers on them. And I
Mm-hmm.
love them because the cat gets on them, so I can take them off, put them in the washing machine, hang them on the line,
Mm-hmm.
get them back on my chairs, and they just look beautiful. So I'm
And
excited. That's great.
I also try to meet interior designers locally, and I haven't had so much success, but I am trying to be more forthright,
Yeah.
but try to be the backup seamstress, because I'm very good at sewing
Yeah.
home decor. So I don't need my name on everything now. I've had my time. I've had the credentials you just told me. So it's not like I haven't already done that. I can check that off the list,
Yeah.
because now you just need the money. And so I don't mind working behind someone else
Yeah.
and, you know, doing
And
whatever
am
is
I allowed to
needed.
say this, Michelle, that Michelle might be working with me and a couple of others on a little project? Am I allowed to say that, Michelle?
We talked about maybe if it works out. Those things are
Maybe.
hard.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, but watch this space. It's something we've been sort of mulling over for a little bit. And every
Mm-hmm.
time I see them, I'm like, oh, I've got to send this to Michelle. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah. So this has been really fascinating. I'd like to open up to the floor. Would anybody that's on here have any questions they are keen to ask Michelle? Feel free to put your hand up or come off mute and ask. It's a great opportunity to pick her brains as to, how she works and how she lists and how she navigates Etsy. She's answered all your questions.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey.
I have to validate what you're saying. I really, when Etsy started doing that, I think it was, I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but they sent something out like further back on that kind of thing, how they were charging us, and like if we were going to show up in some promotion they did, they decided, and then they decided they're going to charge you 25% or whatever it was. And I just wanted to just say it just bothered me a lot. And I pulled back, and I know you didn't have that option because Etsy wasn't necessarily producing, I didn't have the traffic coming in. But I just thought about, did I want to do that? And I was just wondering, would you, and I know probably driving traffic to this is hard, but would you do your own website versus Etsy, or
Yeah.
begin it and then kind of shift over,
Yeah, I have always meant to start a Shopify and move the large pieces over to Shopify, because at least there you just pay rent and transaction fees, but you just pay rent. You don't have all the other
Mhm.
stuff. However,
Mhm.
there's more things to figure out. So at the beginning of COVID 2020, I started that new branding I've told you guys about. It got started, but then COVID happened. My husband, everybody, we weren't in a panic. I'm not the type, and I've been raised in the hospital, so I was not panicked, but it still stopped life, and it had to make you make different choices. And then, my husband fell ill, and then my father passed away the next year, not from COVID, just
Mhm.
usual. So like these things kept happening that kept pushing. The next thing I know, 2 years go by. So now I've just finished paying for the branding I started in 2020. And that branding company, we've got all the beautiful things. Like I have a different name and all that has to go. And that's going to be the Shopify. And
Mhm.
meanwhile, in my head, I'm still trying to get the landing page, decide what to get the email for the landing page, so I can do that too and do what Allie's been teaching us. But yes, and I am dedicated to doing that this year, and especially getting put on the payment reserve. I'm thinking
That's
about making all
unbelievable.
my listings $1
Yeah.
and say that it's $1 for consultation, and then I'll talk to you by email, because I'm like, Etsy, you can keep that dollar, you can keep it, I don't care, I will get them
Yeah,
on the PayPal, but
good.
but yes, but
That's
it
good.
does take effort to go. And because I think I'm so deluded now, I might have all those accolades and people who have starred me to watch me, but who knows? I mean, but my stuff, like Allie said, it's so diluted now. And we've had 15 years of monogramming. People are moving on to other
Mhm.
things. So it's not like I'm number one anymore, anyways, or, in the top 10, rise into the top. So I do have to market now. I do have to find a way to be seen, all the things Allie's teaching us. So even if I do stay on Etsy or move to Shopify or any other platform, I think that I'm going to have to dig down and do the things that the younger people know. And like Allie's learning, she's teaching us. I think it's valuable information because I know I'm going to be using it soon to drive to the next thing that I'm doing. So
Yeah.
yes.
And Allie's talked about this, I think, too, is and I'm not sure exactly how this would play into it, but there's a number of artists that I know that are pretty global and like very, very successful, and whether it's on social media or galleries or whatever, and they are absolutely all over like a chat GPT kind of thing. And there's so much you can feed it, and Allie knows this, is that you can feed it, I'm going to be establishing a website. Here's how do I drive this traffic to that website. You keep refining and asking questions, and you begin to get, these answers back. And also, it helps you write your, whatever you need for your website or for your social media. There's so many things. It's amazing. Like, you just keep refining that search.
I love that you've brought this up, Christy, because this is next week's lesson is Chat GPT. And I've got to tell you, I've started it last week, and I just keep coming up with all of these things. And we're going to do a demo. So I'm going to give you instructions on how to go in and set up your account and get it all set up. And then we are going to do some live demos together. And I'm trying to, it seems my magic number is 30, right? So 30 email content ideas, 30, 30, 30. So Chat GPT is, so I've been using it for lots of really fun things lately, and I'm dying to share that with you. So I'm really looking forward to next week. I'm so pleased you brought that up, Christy, because I think as artists, we potentially are a bit scared of artificial intelligence. And what does this mean? Or what even is it? How can we use it? And there is so many ways how we can use Chat GPT, which will save you so much time. Yeah.
I think you and this other artist, Sergio, who I've been taking some courses from, both of you have, I think, which is so great because it gives everybody permission or opens the gate to do it instead of being like, this is not going to be good. It's, and just diving in and using it and making it a great tool.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful you're going to be doing this, because I've even tried just like, Googling the Chat GPT or, whatever. And then I'll get to a page and I'm like, I have no idea what to do. So this will be great because it'll, poke or break the ice on that and get me at least into it.
And I'm going to share a little secret. Like, I jumped into it yesterday and I'm like, please put together 30 sketching ideas for everyday items. Something along the lines of, it wasn't 30, it was actually 100. I asked it for 100 sketching ideas of everyday items around the home for an artist challenge. And it produced this whole list of 100 ideas. And I had a look through it and I went, wow, that's actually really cool. And then I can go spice it up or make it more floral, and so then it changes this list. It's fascinating. It's so much fun. So I can't wait to share that with you next week, and we'll dive into that some more. When I say next week, I have actually got something else that I was going to talk to you about at the end before I talk this up too much, but I will share with you guys here and we can decide what we're going to do. But before we finish off, Danny, did I see you had your hand up for Michele? Yes, ask away.
So I think one of the main, I have an Etsy shop. I had one for years. I didn't use it and I have just started using it. I think I had a little light bulb moment tonight when the keywords. So start with the keywords and then let go everything on from that.
Yeah.
So that I thank you for. I do follow a number of artists that are selling and sell from their own websites. They are illustrators, most of them. They have cards, puzzles, paint by numbers, tablecloths, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And they always say, if you're from, usually these are UK-based companies, so if you're from Europe, can you please buy through my Etsy store? So Etsy, because they have made that bit easier, they're kind of keeping some of their clients, especially across the pond.
So it's making the tax collecting easier, Danny?
Yes, and I think they even do they'll do a report for you at the end of the year and stuff. But so yeah, they make that easy. You talked about PayPal. PayPal is a little bit sneaky too. If you I know if I was to do a course on PayPal and I'm saying to people, I'm going to do a 3-week course, you need to pay £150 for the course. And if PayPal gets that you're doing a course, they'll hold that money until the end of the course. So they're a little bit sneaky as well.
I don't know that.
What it is as a company gets bigger and bigger and bigger, they seem to, I don't know what the word would be. They seem to have more gumption.
So
They can get away with it.
So you mean
greedy?
You mean Etsy? Yeah. And look, from a finance perspective, remember that because we do it, right? So big financial institutions where they're collecting money, every day that they can hold on to your money that little bit longer, they are getting interest on that money.
Yeah.
Right. So in Australia, especially where superannuation is concerned and clearing houses, so banks clearing houses collect all of the superannuation money and then send it to the various super funds. They hold on to that money for one extra day and then they get all the interest in that money. So these financial institutions are exactly the same. Yeah, are exactly the same.
Wow.
Yeah. And they do. Danny, possibly we need to look at the way you're going to list any courses on PayPal. So I do some of my membership payments on PayPal and they are just a reoccurring membership and that works fine. So, maybe we just need to have a look at if there's a different way that you can list if you're going to do a course, that they don't hold your money to the end of that course. Yeah. Worth investigating.
I think I'm going to do it through Stripe and I have my setup so I shouldn't have to use PayPal, but I can use PayPal if I want through the same website hosting company that I'm going to use. It can be a Stripe payment or a PayPal payment depending on the client chooses in their what they tick. Yeah. So no, I think you have that sorted out.
Yeah, but, well done.
And I think with AI that you got all excited about, the trick is, and the key thing is to keep it in your voice.
Yes. And you have to educate it. It's like any tool, right? You have to educate it for what you want it to say. So, for example, the AI, so Chat GPT that I use, I wouldn't start putting in a whole heap of artist prompts and then next week go, how do I change the oil filter in my car? Because then I've just completely thrown what is she, I'm educating it to what I want by the prompts and the questions I'm asked. It's really sophisticated. I actually really love it. But again, you've got to be careful about your educating it. So don't go throwing, a spanner in the works, something from left field, because you've now introduced something else. So when you go back to talking about art, it's kind of a bit confused about what you're asking it to do. So you've got to educate it. Drew, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, let me try and take it down. I guess I just have one simple question. If you weren't using Etsy now, it sounds to me like it is not for the faint of heart. So would you suggest that people find other alternatives because you are already so established, or
Actually,
Uh,
I would say Etsy's the best place to start. It's 20 cents and it gives you lots of practice. I mean, I'm annoyed as a person who is making my money on it that when you're
uh-huh.
getting, I mean, by the time you're making a couple thousand a month, I should have moved on a long time ago. I didn't have the courage. And I let life make me stop and go. I'm not Martha Stewart. I want to be, but I am not driven and say, get out of my way.
You're our
I'm
Martha
doing it.
Stewart, Michelle.
I
You're our
have to,
Martha Stewart.
well, I'm not, I don't have her drive. Um, but may we all be as attractive when we're 81,
Yeah.
even with some air brushing. But,
Yeah.
so I would say Etsy's a great playground for 20 cents. You can
Uh-huh.
list
Yeah,
something and then they take a little money for it. In that case, let them have
yeah,
the money. Because
yeah,
it's such,
Okay.
it's like your lessons.
yeah.
It's
And
a
it's so
wonderful,
convenient.
and
It
it's
is so
convenient.
convenient.
And you can learn about the SEOs. I mean, I could help any of you if anybody wanted. I do love to write. So if you wanted help creating a listing, I could help somebody do one.
Mm.
But and then you can learn to take beautiful photos. You see this wall behind me.
Mm-hmm.
My friends and I made it beautiful so I can take pictures in front of it. What you don't see over here is I don't have umbrellas. That would be easy if I just buy some umbrellas. My husband built me this because back in 2008, no one knew how to do this. So I have this big wooden thing with these stands, and then we put these lights. I've got 4 lights, and then there's daylights inside it. So if my pictures come out with a touch of yellow, I scrap that. If you look at my photos, even on Instagram, not the Miss Carolina, but my Calico Daisy Instagram, white. It's beautiful. And I have to say, for some of you, I think that rethink how you photograph your art that you think you want to sell. It's one thing to put it on Instagram, but for yourselves and showing off to your friends, but
Right.
you need white. You need to figure
Yeah,
out how you get daylight that doesn't distort your phone cameras are awesome. So rethink where you take your photos. This room is painted in white. Valspar du jour is very good. It's a beautiful white. Um, so it reflects light well. I've got a window here behind me and over here. You want to think about that. Even my
Yeah.
artwork that I sell, I make sure that I'm taking it in a place where, so I think that it's a great playground to learn. There's 20
Okay.
cents. And,
Gotcha.
so don't be afraid of it. But once you start selling things for hundreds of dollars, move on. Because you don't want to
Gotcha.
be upset that you made a $400 sale and they took what? And the extra
Yeah.
15% because they sent someone
yeah,
to me.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's, Etsy do make it easy. They make it easy to do your listing. They make it easy to sell. Yes, they collect their fees, but they make it easy to ship.
it's a
They
beautiful
make it easy
storefront.
to collect tax. So
They
all of
do.
those things, they do make it easy to do. So,
Yeah.
and yes, you do pay a price for that, right? But, everything in this world is user pays. It's just making sure you're aware of the costs and you're aware of everything
And
up front. And
balance
so there's
it.
no
Yeah.
surprises. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
One thing, and I'm conscious that we're at the top of the hour, but can we just go back to
Thanks.
shipping? Because I know this is a question that gets asked a lot. With shipping on Etsy, would you include the shipping price in your listing amount and then ticket includes shipping? No. Okay.
I don't. Other people do, but I like to do it right because I want you to trust me.
Yeah.
Because I sell fabric by the yard too. I haven't done it in a while, but I've got some fabrics that are heavy, and I'll put in the thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to be $15 worth, but I've got to put it in the medium size shipping
Yeah.
box, and it's
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah.
So people are like, "Oh, I understand that." But
Yeah.
for me, I use priority mail.
Yeah.
So, we have a standard flat rate,
Yeah.
and unless it's not custom, I might use a different
Yeah.
envelope.
And I know
But
Etsy does calculate the shipping, but I was looking at,
I put
whatever
my
I'm
own
going to say.
in.
I was,
I put my own in.
oh, you do? Okay.
I
So,
don't tell the weight. That's
yeah,
another thing. If I move to Shopify, I got to put weights in. But with
yeah.
Etsy, I just pick priority mail, and I don't use their calculations. I say I
Mm,
manually put in my shipping.
mm,
So just say those little artworks that I was selling, I
mm,
put $5 shipping and handling because I already knew that my hard
mm.
photo envelope cost $2.50 and it was going to cost $3 to send to California. So
Yeah,
okay, so $5 will do.
yeah.
But and then the priority mailers, they're one price. So
Right.
I always just use those because it's safe, the envelope is free, and I
Yeah,
know where it's going.
yeah. Because I
But
was looking at something on Etsy myself actually yesterday, and I don't even remember what it was. I have a feeling that I was watching something on YouTube, and one of the artists was talking about a pencil case. So I went in and I had a look, and it was an Etsy listing. So the item was $55 US. And when I went and had a look at the listing and the shipping to Australia, the shipping to Australia was $67. And I'm like, it was a pencil case. It's like, so
because they must have just used, like, they put in a weight and whatever. I would have thought
mm,
that through. Like, when if I don't,
mm. But then
I put it in, like, I would have looked up previous to ever listing. I
yeah,
never listed Australia as an option, like Europe I did. So
yeah,
I knew to send to Europe in a mailer was going to be twice as much as, say, twice as much. And so then
yeah.
I would put that. And then I would also put a little disclaimer in the description that said, if your shipping comes out less than what we've posted, I will return the difference.
Oh, well done. Yeah, okay, that's a great option. Because
Mhm.
I must admit, what I tend to do, and I do this on my Instagram listings. I don't use Etsy, although I do have an Etsy store. But what I tend to do is go to the post office, get it weighed and measured, and exactly how I'm going to package it, so I know that that is the price. That there's going to be no
Mhm.
surprises there. I come
Yep.
back and I add that to my sale price,
Mhm.
and then when I list it with my sale price, I list the total price and I say includes international track shipping.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a place where if you tell, when you're doing your listing, you have a choice to put in manual, then you say, I'll put
Mm,
in my price.
right. Yeah. So you
Because
can,
that
yeah,
very same thing you could do. So then you could
yeah,
say, this costs you $100. The
yeah,
shipping to America will be this. And then
yeah.
it'll be calculated properly, like for your
Right.
accounting and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Very good. Excellent. Does anybody have any other questions for Michele before we wrap up? No? Michele, thank you so much. I
Thank
think
you
it's
for
fair to say
listening.
that we've learned a lot today. And,
I
I
hope
wrote down
so.
research keywords. Like, I agree with you, Danny. I have not done that previously. What a great idea. Go and look at how other people are listing their items, the keywords that they're using, and using those. That's really smart, Michele. Thank you for sharing that with us. Um, and also the title. So, how you are listing the title of the item that you're selling. That was, really good to think about as well. And keeping across your fees and taxes. Michele, you've been so gracious as always. I
Thank you.
love when we get to chat to you. Thank you so much for being so generous and sharing. It's been an absolute pleasure, as I knew it would. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
It was great,
Thank you.
Michele.
Now I'm just going to take Michele off spotlight so she can relax. And I'm going to take myself off spotlight. Okay, before we finish and I stop off the recording today, I just wanted to ask you. So next week we have got Chat GPT as our topic, which I clearly am very excited about. And so I wanted to ask, I'm really keen to flesh out our walk and our project. So talk about what that might look like, how we think that would work, and also bringing everybody along with us that are at different stages of their journey. So some of us are more advanced than others. Some of us are just starting out. So wanted to make sure that when we do this, that everybody comes along with ways that they are comfortable with, so it's not so overwhelming. So what I wanted to remind you is, can you please go into the Facebook group for the lab and vote whether you would like to do the project or whether you would like to continue on with specific topics for learning? And if so, if you've got any ideas of topics, that would be amazing. Chris, thank you so much for yours. They were fantastic. So in regards to the Global Art Walk, as I said, I'd really love to brainstorm this with you. We could do this in two ways. We could move our Chat GPT talk, play and learning to the end of the month where we've got a goal catch up, and we could do that goal catch up on a post. So we could move Chat GPT and we could talk about the artwork this time next week, or we could try and do something midweek and keep Chat GPT to where it is at this time next week. What would be your preference? Anyone? Anyone?
I'd love to
I would like to
have
push it back.
Push Chat GPT back to the end of June?
Yes, if we're going to do a project, I would prefer to get started
Yeah,
on the project.
And it won't be getting started on the project. It will be just brainstorming the project and
Right.
talking about how it would work, so that everybody is comfortable with it. We're all on the same page. I've got a few ideas and I'm really keen to hear from you guys as well. So, you know, we're going to do this together. This isn't going to be me leading you every step of the way, but I am here and I'll be in the trenches, sleeves rolled up, and doing this with you.
I love to have Chat GPT next week. I think that would be, I just think, and not to, you know, try to sell anybody on it, but I do think it may facilitate a lot of things people are doing going forward.
Absolutely right. And there's a lot of
You
talk
know.
about it at the moment, and there's a lot of ways it can be used. Like I use it now and I'm really excited by it. So I'd love to share what I know. But then again, so next week we are at the 1st of June, so we're only pushing it by 4 weeks.
I mean, if we're just talking about our project, we're not learning. It's a separate idea, the project thing, the art walk. And you want us to stay learning each week, you know,
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah.
So
Do we want
I
to
wonder
jump
if
on a
that's
call
like
midweek?
two different, ma'am? What'd you say?
I said, should we just jump on to a call midweek and brainstorm it and keep the learning as this time next week?
Yeah, because if someone's not going to be involved in the art walk for some reason, you know, it doesn't
That's
apply.
true.
Like if people aren't
Right.
ready yet. I
Yeah.
don't want to discount you, Drew, what you said. That's
Oh, no,
important.
I don't
but-
take it that way. In fact, since you
Well,
said jump on
I'm a
another
fast
call,
talker, so.
maybe we could do the talk about the project the first full week of June. Sometime just jump on if we're able.
Yeah.
Like have a
And
separate,
yes,
right.
like the following week, and keep next Friday to this stuff that I have
Yep.
no idea about.
Yeah.
Because that way we keep learning, and then but the art walk thing, everybody's going to have an opinion, and then if someone's not going to participate or they feel too weary to do it, it'll be wasting their time here.
And
for
to
the
be honest,
purpose.
that's why I want to record a Zoom on it, so that if anybody is kind of not been following along with what it's at, they can watch it and see what it's all about.
Right.
Which is why I wanted to do a brainstorming and put my thoughts out there as to how it would work, because for me it would be a two-part project. The first part of it is everybody has set tasks to do, and it's to do with your own Instagram account, getting your own, so basically getting your house in order.
Right.
Because it's like, you know, it's like tidying up before you're having your friends over, right?
Right.
That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be tidying up before we get our friends over, and then we're going to be getting our friends over for the global art walk. So it's kind of bringing everything that we've learnt along the way into fruition, and then having our friends over to have a look at our art and purchase our art. So
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And if you as the infamous leader are willing to do that, then hoorah. I
Yeah.
mean, because that is actually making an extra Zoom for you, but I'm down with it because
No,
I have
that's
no idea what this
yeah.
AI stuff is. So
Yeah.
I'm cool to learn about it
Yeah,
next
no,
week.
I'm very happy that we'll do it as Zoom, and let me work out a date and I'll pop it in the group. And if you're around to make it live, the time might be slightly different to this. We might go a couple of hours earlier, just so it's a bit easy for our European and our UK friends to join us if we just make it that smidge earlier. And let's talk through what the project could look like, what it would include, and then what the art walk might look like just brainstorming. So as we get closer to it, it may change slightly, but just kind of the nuts and bolts, and then we'll keep our learning time the same each week, because honestly, Chat GPT is going to be so fun. I can't wait.
Well, then I think you've almost answered the question for the poll you're taking. I think the majority of us, like with all the great suggestions Chris had, and as Michele was saying, just keep learning, and maybe this can be an added bonus.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, so if there's nothing else, I shall stop recording.